made War Games legendary. 5 men who should have been main eventers reduced to props in someone else's story. A match built on decades of brutality into a sanitized, predictable circus act that disrespected every single fan who stayed up to watch this disaster. And if you think I'm overreacting, stick around because the receipts are about to expose the biggest letdown in Survivor Series history. Let me take you back to what we were promised. Triple H stood in front of cameras and told us this men's War Games match would redefine what violence means in professional wrestling. We were told these 5 warriors would put their bodies on the line in ways we'd never forget. The build-up had us believing we'd witness career-defining moments, blood feuds reaching their apocalyptic conclusion, and the kind of carnage that makes War Games the most feared match in wrestling. Instead, what did we get? A watered-down, paint-by-numbers affair that felt like it was booked by someone who'd never actually watched a War Games match before. The pacing was off from the opening bell. The weapon spots that should have made us gasp were telegraphed so obviously that my grandmother could have called them 3 minutes in advance. And the finish? Don't even get me started on the catastrophic ending that undermined everything the match tried to build. Here's what really grinds my gears. Centimeter Punk walked into this match with the kind of momentum that could have carried an entire WrestleMania. The man had the crowd in the palm of his hand, the storytelling was pitch perfect, and all WWE had to do was let him unleash the chaos we know he's capable of delivering. But no, they handcuffed him with a booking decision so baffling that I'm convinced someone in the back actively wanted to sabotage this match. And Drew McIntyre? This man has been criminally underutilized for years. He's got the look, the intensity, the in-ring ability to be the company's top heel, and War Games should have been his coronation. Instead, he was treated like a mid-card afterthought, given scraps of offense, and made to look weak in the moments that mattered most. The Scottish Warrior deserved better. The fans deserve better. Quick question for you in the comments, who do you think was hurt the most by this match's terrible booking? Drop your answer below and let's see if we're all thinking the same thing. The match structure itself was fundamentally flawed. War Games is supposed to be about the advantage period creating genuine tension. Every 2 minutes, you should be on the edge of your seat wondering how the outnumbered team will survive until their next member enters. But this match, the advantage meant absolutely nothing. The outnumbered guys took zero punishment, they controlled the pace like they had the numbers advantage, and it completely stripped away the whole point of the staggered entry system. Now let's talk about the weapons usage, or should I say, the complete lack of creativity with the tools of destruction. War Games isn't just about having 2 rings and a cage. It's about using that environment to create moments of innovation and brutality that you can't get anywhere else. This match had more weapons at ringside than a hardware store clearance sale, and somehow they managed to make it all feel boring. Remember when Sting and Ric Flair used to weaponize every single part of the cage structure? Remember when the NXT War Games matches had spots so creative you had to rewind them just to figure out how nobody died? This match had none of that creativity. It was chair shot, table spot, rinse and repeat. No psychology behind the weapon usage, no building to bigger spots, just random violence with no purpose or escalation. Seth Rollins came into this match with a surgically repaired knee that the commentary team spent weeks telling us was a liability. This should have been the story of the match. His opponents should have been circling that knee like sharks smelling blood in the water. Instead, Seth was doing suicide dives and frog splashes like he was at 100%. What was the point of the injury angle if you're not going to pay it off? It's lazy storytelling that insults the intelligence of everyone watching. And can we address the elephant in the room? The table spots in this match were embarrassing. Tables are supposed to be the exclamation point on a sequence of violence, the moment where the crowd explodes because someone just went through furniture. But these table breaks looked so staged and choreographed that they removed all impact. When a table spot gets a lukewarm reaction in a War Games match, you're wrong. The cage itself was barely used. Do you realize how insane that is? This while getting no one to creative ways. It was like watching a street fight that just happened to have a cage around it for decoration. Be honest in the comments, on a scale of 1 to 10, how disappointed were you with the weapon spots in this match? Let me know where you're at. The pacing of this match was an absolute train wreck, and I need you to understand why this matters so much. War Games is a marathon, not a sprint. You need to build momentum, create crescendos, give the audience on a sugar rush. Everything happened. There was nowhere to go when it was time for the big spots. The performers were already blown up 12 minutes in because they were working at WrestleMania main event pace during what should have been the feeling out process. By the time we got to the actual climax, everyone looked gassed and the crowd was struggling to maintain their energy. Roman Reigns entered this match with the kind of star power that should have changed the entire complexion of the contest. The tribal chief should command attention the moment he steps through that door. Instead, his entrance felt flat, his offense looked pedestrian, and he was booked like just another guy in the match instead of the guy who should be carrying the narrative. Here's what really bothers me about Roman's involvement. For years, we've been told he's the head of the table, the final boss, the measuring stick for everyone else. But in this match, he wasn't protected, he wasn't dominant, and he wasn't given the moments that reinforce his top guy status. If you're going to put Roman in War Games, you better make it matter, or don't waste his aura on a match that doesn't elevate it. The mid-match lulls were inexcusable. There were stretches where nothing of consequence was happening, just generic brawling with no story being told. In a match format specifically designed to have constant action and no downtime, how do you create segments where the crowd starts looking at their phones? That's a booking failure at the most fundamental level. And let's discuss the complete absence of narrative threads being paid off. Wrestling isn't just about moves, it's about stories. Every feud coming into this match had unresolved tension that should have been addressed in that cage. Rivalries should have been settled. Long-term storytelling should have reached satisfying conclusions. Instead, we got a match that felt like it existed in a vacuum, disconnected from everything that came before it. Drop a comment telling me which storyline from the build-up you think was completely wasted in this match. I want to hear what made you the most frustrated. Now we need to talk about that finish, because this is where the match went from disappointing to genuinely effective. The ending of a War Games match should leave you it should be a culmination of everything that came. This finish did none of that. The winner taken any significant damage, after a move that we've seen kicked out of a dozen times in regular matches. There was no drama, no suspense, no reason to believe this was the killing blow. The referee's hand hit 3 and half the arena was confused about whether the match was actually over. But here's the real slap in the face, the wrong team won. Now, I know some of you are typing angry responses already, but hear me out. The team that lost had every single narrative reason to win. They had the character development, the crowd support, the momentum going into the match, and the logical next steps for their storylines. The winning team got absolutely nothing from this victory except a participation trophy they didn't need. What was the point? What story does this finish tell? Where do any of these characters go from here that's more interesting than where they would have gone with the opposite result? These are the questions that should have been answered before anyone even started writing the match layout, and the fact that there are no good answers tells you everything about how poorly made it worse. Instead of creating intrigue, just confused people and raised more questions than answers. Good booking should make you excited about what comes next. This made people want to turn off their screens and pretend the whole thing never happened. Here's where this gets really painful. We have to compare this match to War Games classics, and it's like comparing a Honda Civic to a Ferrari. The original Four Horsemen War Games matches had intensity and hatred dripping from every second. The NXT War Games revival under Triple H created new classics that honored the legacy while pushing the format forward. This match feels like it was made by people who never understood what made those matches special. Think about Undisputed Era versus DIY, Dream, Ricochet, and Pete Dunne from NXT TakeOver. That match was 37 minutes of perfectly structured chaos where every spot meant something, every character had a role, and the finish left everyone satisfied even if their team lost. That is how you do War Games. This Survivor Series match missed every single element that made that formula work. Or go back further to the Bloodsport era when Sting's team battled the Dangerous Alliance. Those men made you believe they genuinely wanted to hurt each other. The cage wasn't just a stipulation, it was a necessity because these warriors couldn't be contained by normal rules. They used psychology, told stories with their body language, and created moments that fans still talk about decades later. This modern version felt sanitized and corporate, like it was designed by committee to hit certain marketing points rather than create an organic wrestling classic. Every decision felt calculated for the wrong reasons, prioritizing safe, predictable beats over the raw emotion and legitimate danger that makes War Games unforgettable. The worst part is that WWE has shown they can do this correctly. The women's War Games match at this same event was superior in almost every way. It had better pacing, more creative spots, clearer storytelling, and a finish that made sense. So, we know that the formula exists within the company. It completely dropped the ball in execution. Performers. This is not a criticism of the talented, dedicated, and capable of having a 5-star classic any given night. The failure here is not on the wrestlers, it's on the agents, producers, and decision-makers who put them in a position to fail. These performers deserved better material. They deserved a layout that showcased their strengths. They deserved a finish that meant something. Instead, they were handed a script that undermined their abilities and made them look worse than they actually are. That's a travesty when you're talking about main event level talent being wasted on poorly conceived booking. Jey Uso was lost in the shuffle of this match, barely getting significant time despite being one of the most over performers on the roster. His family dynamics with Roman should have been a major subplot, creating tension and drama throughout the contest. Instead, he was treated like interchangeable filler, robbing fans of the emotional payoff his character arc deserved. Sami Zayn continues to prove he's one of the best in-ring storytellers in wrestling, but even his brilliance couldn't overcome the structural problems with this match. He did everything in his power to create emotional moments and meaningful exchanges, but when the overall framework is broken, even exceptional individual performances can't save the final product. The reality is that this match will be forgotten in 6 months, and that's the saddest part of all. War Games should create legendary moments that define careers and live forever in highlight packages. This match created nothing memorable, nothing that will be referenced years from now as a turning point for anyone involved. That's an opportunity completely squandered. So where does WWE go from here? How do they repair the damage done to the War Games brand by this disappointing outing? The answer is simple: learn from these mistakes. Go back and study what made the classic matches work. Give your talent the freedom to create magic inside that cage. Stop playing it safe and start taking the risks that make professional wrestling unforgettable. The Men's War Games match at Survivor Series 2025 will go down as a missed opportunity of epic proportions. With the right performers, the right stories, and the right stage, this should have been an instant classic. Instead, it's a cautionary tale about what lose sight of what makes a stipulation special in the first place. But I want to hear from you. Am I being too harsh? Did you see something I missed that made this match work for you? Or are you just as frustrated as I am about what could have been? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you agree, and share this video with everyone who needs to understand why this match failed to deliver. And here's my final question for the comment section. If you could rebook this match from scratch with the same participants, what would you change to make it a classic? Give me your fantasy booking, because I guarantee most of you could have done better than what we got. This is Wrestling Zone 1, where we keep it real about what works and what doesn't in professional wrestling. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We've got more hard-hitting analysis coming your way, and you won't want to miss it. Until next time, stay passionate about this business, and never settle for mediocrity. That disrespected every single fan who stayed up to watch this disaster. I think I'm overreacting. Stick around, because the receipts are about to expose the letdown in Survivor Series history. Let me take you back to stood in front of camera